Now, this morning, we have left of the hour we had allocated to the lightning and the stone only half an hour. And I am breathing a sigh of relief because I thought the lightning was quite heavy in order to shatter the stone, if you know what I mean. We want to talk then this morning on the lightning as that which comes down from heaven, that which is from above, as compared to that which is densified substance below here in the sphere and realm of earth itself. We are dwelling in a vale of some tears. Occasionally we have tears in this world, and I think actually there are many kinds of tears. There are tears of joy as there are tears of sorrow. There are moments of happiness and there are moments of sorrow. But even in moments of sorrow, when everything may not go just as we expect it to go or anticipate it to go, we can still derive some measure of happiness, providing we utilize the learning process to see just what it was in our world that created the causes that manifest as the effects that we see on the screen of life. And actually, I remember in reading a spiritual story written by an Eastern author, where he tells of his spiritual guru meeting on the pathway in the jungle a very large, I believe it was a boa constrictor, who was ready to strike. And the master smiled at the snake, and he clucked a little bit, and he said, greetings, brother. He didn't actually cringe and start terror vibrations running all over his being, but he just welcomed the snake because he saw that the snake that was coming was a manifestation, no doubt, of some of his karma or a test. And so he determined that he was going to meet that test with that calmness of mind which is the forte of an ascended person or an unascended person who has peace and balance in his world and faith in the ultimate outcome of the goodness of God. The ultimate outcome of the goodness of God is something that we should learn to live with, because it is a very valuable part of the lightning and the stone. We here in this world are indeed living in the consciousness of the stone, of the rock, that entombs the vibratory action of the imprisoned lightning that is within ourselves, the lightning of the soul. The soul that is within us has all the capacities for enjoyment of things on a higher plane, the enjoyment of beautiful music. There is a response then that comes from that soul that is the most valuable adornment, the most valuable manifestation that any of you have, is that soul. Yet, who esteems the soul to truly be great or of value? The average person today in the world of form does not even know that they have a soul. What a shame, what a pity. It is truly the greatest tragedy of life that people do not understand or know the lightning that came down from heaven, that is the flash of cosmic fire in the pan of manifestation, that shows us that we are something more than just 98 cents worth of chemicals put together with a little water and air. Our physical bodies themselves are nothing more than a chalice. And a chalice is not only decorative, but useful when it houses the lightning that is imprisoned within it. And so we have the lightning striking the stone and rolling it away. We have the lightning moving and motivating people. It is the Holy Spirit that actually is creating in us a new mind, an ever new consciousness that can cope with every situation that we face, bar none. There are no situations that we can face that can overcome the soul. You know, there is an illustration that I like to use, and I think I will use it today. It is the illustration of a little growing vine that comes out of the earth, and this vine finds that it encounters a rock, and as it comes to the rock, it begins to push it aside regardless of its weight. If necessary, it will crack or shatter the rock and come forth in full bloom. We want you to understand this illustration because it speaks of immortality that can shatter the shroud of mortal density that is all around us in our physical body. And our physical body, unfortunately today, is surrounded by calcination, not only in the rigorous sense of mental and emotional calcification, but in physical calcification, such as in arteriosclerosis, hardening of the arteries, and all kinds of things that set in our physical body. The physical body is only one aspect of the total man. And so I suspect that if all of us were able today to look at our arteries and see just what the condition of our arteries were, we might be astounded. And some people at a very early age might be totally shocked and realize that the seeds of old age and rigor mortis were already setting in as a result of the bad food that they are eating. But while people are concerned with their physical diet, let them also have concern for their mental, spiritual, and emotional diet, because these are vital factors in the total identification and pattern of a man in manifestation, a human being. We should understand that in order to have total freedom, we need the lightning of your own God presence, of your I am presence, active in your total consciousness. Those who think that they are getting away with something are not. Those who will not come here because they think they have something better to do, and I assure you that that is exactly the only reason why we don't have the Shrine Auditorium or some great place here in California to speak, is because not enough people know that we even exist. There are many people that would be interested in hearing what we have to say, and under the proper setting, under the proper positioning in the world, we could draw tremendous numbers of people so that this building here, of course, would not hold it. We would have to rent a larger area here in Santa Barbara and perhaps even the largest area in Los Angeles. We believe that that time will come because the lightning that is active in us today is a manifestation of the Christ consciousness. And this will bring about a response in the people, even as it has brought about a response in you. Everyone has to have their various stages of manifestation. In other words, a person that is born a little tiny baby cannot even turn over in bed. And eventually the child learns to creep upon the floor. And then the child learns to stand and take tottering steps. And eventually the child learns to walk. And then the child learns to run. And so as we gauge these various stages in the development of this movement itself, we have to take into consideration the fact that we started with 4 people a little over 10 years ago in our nation's capital under the direction of the ancient masters of wisdom. I use the term ancient because we do not want you to associate them with some master that just came over on a boat or a plane from India or someplace like that. These masters are the masters of the ancient wisdom. Now, with their help and theirs alone, we have been able to draw today in the world approximately 25,000 people and have contacted at least another 75,000 in the course of our work. Naturally, everyone is not ready for the higher teachings. People take up various types of spiritual training because of what they feel they are going to get out of it. The unique thing here is that most of our people take up the Summit Lighthouse with the idea of how much they're going to get out of it, and then finally they decide they're going to put all that they can into it. So now it becomes a matter of how much can I put into it. And that's actually what's happened here. Most of our people have put everything into it. And that is why this is a different movement than most of them, because the people are not just looking for a handout or to get something wonderful for themselves, but to give something wonderful to their fellow men. And that is why when the people come here and start their decree patterns, they'll sit here on these hard chairs, although they're not all that hard, but I guess thinking could make it so. They're not quite like a bench. And so they'll sit here on these chairs and they'll decree for hours, and they'll carry on a work not just for themselves, but for humanity, because this is an activity of divine, of universal love. And so the lightning has manifested in all of our people, and it doesn't take a great deal of inner vision to even the young people of our land today that come in here, sometimes having the feeling that life is not really all that they expect of it. And when they come in here, they begin to get a glimpse that here is a little glimmer of hope, a little flash of that lightning, that spark that they first see that draws them magnetically to this movement. And so the lightning and the stone are very vital manifestations, not only in the time of Jesus, but in our time. We have to learn to relate. We have to learn to relate to the movement of the lightning in our time. The lightning that comes from the east and goeth unto the west is that which comes from within ourselves and goes into the manifestation of the outer man. In other words, it comes from the inner man and it moves to the outer man, so that the outer man will ultimately gather enough of the sacred fire, enough of the divine elements, that he can return back to become the inner man in the outer sense. The outer man, in other words, ultimately becomes one with the inner man of the Spirit. Now, this is far more important than you realize at first. I know that when you hear someone say that at first, it becomes to you perhaps no more than just words. But there is an actual function whereby the God within man transforms. And what does he transform? He transforms the outer man, so that the outer man then becomes the inner man in manifestation. Now, this is a great deal more than words, because what we are bringing forth out of the fountain, that is what is important. There are many fountains. There's many kinds of bread. There's many kinds of wheat. You see, there are certain elements that have to come together in order to make the best wheat, the best bread, the best water, the best man, the best woman. You have to have what we call an accumulation of virtues. And all of these virtues are in God. He does not lack even one solitary virtue. He has them all. And so when the inner man begins to send forth the radiance of himself, it is an activity of hidden virtue. And the hidden virtue eventually seizes the various qualification areas of the mind. In other words, the parts of the mind that make up the man, and point by point the man becomes Christ united and Christ identified. This is not just words. In reality, this is the Word, the Logos, the power of the Godhead being actually transformed into the physical world through the doorway of you. Have you ever thought of yourself as a doorway? You are a doorway to a tomb. The living Christ actually is passing through the ritual of sleeping in the tomb, awaiting the resurrection. The living Christ identifies with this stone that is you. In the Scriptures it says, if any man ask his father bread, will he give him a stone? And so what we have received, what we manifest, what we are, what is happening in the world today is totally the result of man's failure to understand what God has given to him. Oh, what a brilliant light. What a tremendous flash of lightning is involved in this that rolls away the stone from the doorway of the tomb of individual manifestation. You are going to be simply amazed at what you really are when you start getting more and more into it. When you first start out, the obstacles seem greater, the stone seems heavier than the lightning. And yet the lightning has the power, and it has the power to remove the calcination from the stone. Why, heaven cannot only take out of your physical arteries whatever accumulation you have had there as you begin to eat right, but heaven can also take out of your mind those logy thoughts that make you feel as heavy as a log mentally, that simply weight you down with ballast, and you can't very well rise. That's why St. Paul said, let us lay aside the sin that so easily besets us, the consciousness of sin. What is the strength of sin if it is not the law, you see? In other words, there would be no need for a law if people had the lightning of the eternal presence. Jesus brought that out very beautifully when he said, love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and thy neighbor as thyself. He said, on these 2 points hang the law and the prophets. Why, you know, God isn't really interested in creating a series of laws. We have such functions over at headquarters. Over the years, we have had to make rules and regulations for our staff. And this is absolutely essential. If we didn't have these rules and regulations, we wouldn't even have an organization back at headquarters. But I think every one of you and the staff members themselves know full well that we don't even want rules and regulations. We wish we could throw them out the window. But we have to have them because we assign certain people the task of putting, for example, paper towels in the paper towel holders in the several restrooms we have at headquarters. And so some of these people are too busy. They don't think. They get too involved. Too much lightning. You have to take in quite a bit sometimes, you know. Water's good. But anyway, they get too involved, you see, with themselves. Because actually, if we have a certain role and we fulfill that role, we don't have to worry. But if we don't, somebody else has to check to see whether the other people are doing it. So we have another person that goes around and checks. And the person that comes around and checks, they say, well, they didn't do it. And so we have to have a rule. And the rule is what stands up. But eventually we hope to throw all the rules out the window. That's when we get a little further advanced, all of us. And so, actually, there is quite a bit of advancement there. Don't let me kid you on that. But the point is, if man would only understand who he really is, he wouldn't need any law at all. That's what I'm trying to bring up. Because it is all fulfilled in that. Love the Lord thy God with all thy heart. Love the spiritual things. Now this love of God probably is transferred by most people to the visible things. It's rather difficult for people to love the invisible nature of spirit because they do not seem to realize what spirit is. They can't see it. And so it's out of sight, out of mind. They don't know who and what they're loving. And so people generally have just a sort of a feeling of radiation toward God, of establishing a contact with God by loving the invisible spirit. They love what the spirit stands for. The spirit stands for the fire of the sun, for the beauty of the sun. It stands for the verdure of nature. It stands for the calmness of the sea, or even the raging of the sea. It stands for the wind. It stands for time, and it stands for eternity. And you can see this in the eyes of a baby. In the eyes of a baby, you can see God there. And I have seen a picture of a man who was 140 years old just before he passed away. And I could see God in his eyes, because he had reached that level of consciousness where his eyes were really fixed on the Spirit. And I somehow or other believe that there are mechanisms that have to be developed in man whereby he can actually see into the spiritual plane. And I believe that there are levels in the spiritual plane where manifestation occurs, if you understand what I'm trying to say. In other words, manifestation occurs, and you can develop spiritual sight to the point where actually you can see that something is there, just as tangibly as you can see something is here. When you first open your eyes and your mother bends over you after you've been born, you don't know that's your mother, do you? You don't know if it's your aunt, or it's your uncle, or who it is. It's just a blob of light, a blob of substance, perhaps with a little light shining on it. And you don't even identify objects. You don't know what it is. But it doesn't take you long before, through familiarity, you come to identify with objects. And so it is in the spiritual world. And the spiritual world has various levels or planes of consciousness. And so we find after a while that there is what we call pure spirit. But still, if you had just white light and identified white light as spirit, because there would be no delineation, no difference. You wouldn't see anything but white light, so you couldn't identify anything but white light, could you? And so there is a value to color, and a value to movement, and a value to time, and a value to eternity. So the lightning in the stone is really a beautiful concept of the lightning that rolls away the stone from the face of life and releases the imprisoned lightning that is no longer then an exile. And you don't have to be an exile here. You can have attunement with hundreds of masters, or you can elect to attune with one. It doesn't matter. But here's one of the great dangers of our time, and I think of all time, is that people develop exclusive affiliations. They reach a point where they say, well, he or she is my master. Now, I'm devoted to Mother Mary, they'll say. And I am really in attunement with Mary. This is fine. This is beautiful. But you don't have to feel that you're an enemy of Jesus because you're in love with Mary. Or vice versa. All of the masters work together. And I think it is very important this morning in this lecture on the lightning and the stone that you should all understand what I'm trying to convey. That a person should not have the idea that because they love Master Moria, they have to sort of shy away from Saint Germain. Or if you love Saint Germain, that you have to shy away from Moria. You say he's too tough. Or you say Saint Germain, he's very gentle and so I like him. Saint Germain can be tough too. They can all be tough because they recognize that it takes a certain amount of mental and emotional toughness in order to cope with human beings and their human recalcitrance, which is really the stone itself. The stony hearts that people have. Well, I'll give you an illustration of stony heartedness. I have seen dictations given where the room was literally saturated with cosmic fire. I have seen dictations given sometimes where they were completely what we call ex cathedra, or out of the mouth of God, and the room was absolutely vibrating with the spiritual energy of higher planes. And then we have had the benediction, and the people started out the door. I have seen and I see again and again where they are already discussing their next fishing trip, or they're discussing what they're going to eat, whether it's going to be pork or steak or beans, or they're talking about anything they want to talk about 10 feet from their chair after they've left. Not the sanctuary, but just left that chair. You see what I mean? Now, I don't stand here and condemn people for doing this, don't get me wrong. But I think it is unfortunate because it indicates how quickly people can shift their emphasis from the higher planes right away, almost before they can receive the blessing. They're already going out the door and they're thinking of what they're going to do in a physical way. Now, why am I mentioning this? I'm telling you why now. I'm mentioning it because it takes a certain amount of time after a dictation before you have congealed within yourself the spiritual energies that actually are the great emulsifiers of the inner life that can strip away from you the undesirable qualities and qualifications that you have already built into yourself. It takes a certain amount of time before a detergent can go to work on your clothes, and that's why you soak them. And you should soak yourself a little bit in the radiation of the Masters, to tell you the truth, and not just run out and get to the latest eatery and go down there and fill yourself up with a bunch of crud and junk, and that's what it is, and then at the same time lose a lot of the radiation, because you need a certain amount of time to soak it up. And I'm telling you the truth, and I'm only telling it to you because it is the truth. And you will develop more spiritually, faster, if you'll do this. A lot of people have been coming to classes for years and don't understand sometimes why, with all the wonderful dictations, they don't make greater spiritual progress. I think it's very true that most of the people are making spiritual progress. I don't question that, even though some of them do. I don't question it. There's only a few that do, but I don't question it. I say it again. I know they're making progress, but they would make a little more if they'd allow themselves a time to soak up what the dictations tell them. When you get a dictation, that's a great thing. That's a tremendous experience, because it isn't just what the Master says, it's what energy the Master is sending out and how that energy is working to impact your inner being. So, dear hearts, consider what I say. I say it from the higher level. I don't say it from the earthy in reality. And so, in this drama of the lightning and the stone, this Easter, let us begin to understand that the lightning is working in the stone of the physical body and making it a living flesh being. That's so that the blood can flow and circulate good through your being. Now, if you don't believe it, just take your hands right now, all of you, and let's clap our hands about 25 times and watch how the blood will flow. Now feel the tingling in your hands. You see, that's the circulation that we need. We have to have the vibrant circulation. Now, you may not know this. Now let's hold your hands up here and clap mentally. Don't clap your physical, just clap mentally. Ready? Okay? Now feel the tingling in your hands. It isn't just residual tingling, but you can clap with your finer bodies. You can move. You can create impulses. I want you to understand that you are a mobile being. How would you like to be a tree deva? People have the idea that a tree deva just stands there in a grove. And I don't know what tree devas are supposed to do. I think that they actually handle a lot of natural functions, but they think they just stand there in a grove and they're there for people when they come out on Sunday. And they never say anything to people. They just stand there and they are, you know. And people say, gee, what a boring thing it is to be a tree deva. How would you like to be a tree? Well, he said, I see men as trees walking. Did you know that's in the Bible? Yes. So he says, I see men as trees walking. So you see, actually, the tree devas move. You may as well understand that. They don't only move on the stages of the Metropolitan Opera, you know, but they also move in actuality. So I want you people to get some idea of mobility. So you have flow in your body, and so you have flow in your mind, and so you have flow in your spirit. And then you'll be able to get with the masters a great deal more, because believe me, they have flow. The lightning strikes the stone. Thank you.